Either this is the tackiest union speech I've ever seen, or this is Jason trying to pull his old tricks off from the Hellenistic dynasty. Call lawyer Yahweh by Hashem, Yahweh Shai by Hashem, Rakakadash, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and Shalom. And salutations to you brothers that's pushing the words of truth, and Shalom to the Akim and Agua in the elect. I mean, like I said, it's either the tackiest unity speech I've ever seen. I mean, I think all over, plastered over IUIC's videos is that we're having a Passover. Come join us. Buy your tickets before they sell out. I mean, it would have been a better presentation had you just showed up at the Passover with one of them IUIC outfits on, with a Sakari edition on it, maybe a Sakari number 5 on the back or something, and did it that way. That would have been at least more elaborate. But just a little quick video with a hoodie and a hat on, talking about everybody's crazy unless we don't understand why unity is the most important thing. I think the Apostle Gabar was right on the money in titling this video, Should We Follow Jason? And through the Spirit Brothers, you know, it's time to get back into those Maccabees and really get up on that Greek Hellenist culture. Try to find out what exactly was so important about the Greeks that our people started to lose their mind over that culture. And I got a few things I'm going to bring out right now. So I did some research and stumbled across a video called Who Was Judah Maccabee? Jewish Biography as History by Dr. Henry Abramson. All right. So this is a Amalekite, all right, speaking on behalf of our history, which he believes is his. He's delusional as well. There's a lot of delusion going on. And he's telling the story about how Alexander the Greek, or the Great, in 323 BC, started to conquer. And he gives a little insight, which is good information that we can apply today, especially with current events going on, of why Israelites fell in love with the Greeks. Was it just because we was in captivity under them? Was it just because we ain't had nothing else to do? Was it because we started denying our own faith and just getting bored with the laws? He goes into it a little bit. I'm going to play it now.
He wanted to actually push further, but his soldiers rebelled. They had been on the road for quite a long time. And in his early 30s, he died before he could return, most likely from alcohol poisoning. Very rowdy, kind of high-living individual making his way across Europe. Now, in terms of the culture, you know, what exactly is Greek culture? What was so fascinating to the Jews? The Greeks were scientific thinkers. Greeks worked with things like the axioms of who was Euclidean axioms, right? Euclides, who just worked out some basic mathematical theorems that were so useful that, you know, you could never build a bridge the same way again without thinking about Euclides. They developed the science of architecture. They developed aesthetics. They made up rules for beauty. They figured out what does beauty look like, and they could actually codify these things in words. They were poets. They were mythographers. They were phenomenal actors in the intellectual sphere. Perhaps the most significant of them was the early thinker Socrates, who was most famous for knowing that he knew nothing, right? Gnostote, know yourself. That was one of his most important maxims. And in the Periclean age, which is about 500 years before the Common Era, he began a school of philosophy that had tremendous implications and continues to reverberate throughout contemporary thought and today. In particular, his student Plato, who is shown here on the left in this famous 16th century fresco by Raphael. Plato is pointing to the sky, indicating that there is a higher reality than that which we experience on this world. And his student on the left, Aristotle, who was saying, no, everything is on this world, everything is physical, and they continue to debate. But we have this school of thought from Socrates to Plato to Aristotle, which ultimately encompasses all philosophical thought ever since. As the great philosopher, I think it was Alfred North Whitehead, once said, all philosophy is merely footnotes to Plato. So the Greeks gave us this, among many other things, mathematics, science, politics, their sense of ethics and so on, really determined by Greek values. They also offered us, among other things, the sense of the beauty of the human body. And this is where I've adapted this lecture a little bit for Flatbush. The Greeks, of course, were very famous for creating the Olympics, and the adulation of the beauty of the human body engaged in sport, which they took very seriously, and they would regularly have, nude sporting matches, only for men. But the wrestling was considered the prime sport because it was just, no devices, no tools whatsoever, just the skill and musculature of one man pitted against each other. And these were actually religious affairs for them to engage in wrestling. So I had some pictures of wrestlers up here, and I asked my secretary, what do you think? Can I show this in Flatbush? She was saying, no, not that one, not that one, not that one. It took us about 2 hours. Eventually, we got through all the wrestling pictures. And
so beauty, politics, naked wrestling, philosophy, science, and math, amongst other things, started to come out of Hellenistic Greek culture. And Greek became a way of life. And as you can see, Israel started to just adapt, and it became a thing to speak in Greek and to write in Greek and so forth and so on. The Greeks, a tremendous way of life came out of Greek culture that still emanated even after the Romans took over Greece and took over the Greek Empire. Another stat said 40% of all books in Jerusalem at the time of 70 AD were written in Greek. And so the literature even began to be Greek. So this is all the way down to Jerusalem because it was a Hellenistic period. And the whole civil war, which was the history of the Maccabees in those books, it's basically a covering or a chronicle of a civil war, dealing with Israelites who wanted to remain into the law, into the old way, into tradition, into adherence strictly to the law under the Seleucid rulership and oppression. And then you had Israelites who wanted to loosen up a little bit, become more like the Greeks. And when Antiochus Epiphanes came through with his mandates, as far as, slaughtering a pig, forcing Israelites and Jake to slaughter pigs, this was when you get the story of the Maccabees, starting with Mattathias, the father, who pretty much, condemned that way of life, the Greek way of life, and stuck to and adhered to the Israelite way of life, and would choose death over it. And when somebody came to his town, because they was in the offskirts, and when they came to his town to force them to sacrifice a pig, basically voluntarily asked them to sacrifice, make a sacrifice of a pig, he wouldn't do it, but somebody in his town did, and that's when Mattathias went and slew that man and slew the representation of the king who were there to witness that account and make it happen. So that's when the beginning of the assaults happened, guerrilla warfare happened, and it was basically a large-scale civil war at one point in time. It wasn't just us fighting the Greeks. It was Israelites who would adhere to the law versus Israelites who was more trying to loosen up and uphold the Greekish fashions and customs and way of life. Let's hear a little bit more.
So, anyways, you have to use your imagination, not too much, but it's a Flatbush adaptation. So these are the things that Alexander gave us. Now, as Jews, we loved it. We just absorbed it. Nothing could be better than it. The Greek way of thinking, the logic of Greek. In fact, the word logic itself is Greek, from the word logos, meaning word. We just fascinated with it, and anyone with even a cursory familiarity with the Mishnah and the Talmud sees how deep Greek culture reached into our way of thinking, and we're constantly borrowing.
Which he's referring to things that did not come out of the Israelites, things that came out of things that Amalek, all right, specifically reads and prescribes as rabbinic resources and vital to his faith, Talmud and Mishnah. What he's talking about is things that they believe in that had nothing to do with the scriptures. These was later on added so-called rabbinical texts in which a lot of that just goes off. So, but he's referring to essentially how the truth of the matter is that our people definitely adopted a lot of these customs, and because there was a diaspora, that began the trend of the circumcision versus the uncircumcision, meaning the diaspora Jews, the ones that were outside of Jerusalem, who didn't have a temple there, right, where they lived in Alexandria, and some was Rome, Tarsus, all the way up to Rome, right? Cappadocia, all these other places outside of Jerusalem also were Jews dwelling there who spoke Greek and had certain Greek fashions and customs, but they were Jews, and a lot of them still believed on, the Abrahamic covenant, right? And the laws that came from Moses, but they just didn't adhere to it like those at Jerusalem. So that division pretty much caused a civil war during the time of the Maccabees. But there was definitely always a love for Greek customs coming out of certain Israelites, all the way back into the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, as you have right here, especially when he forced, all right, a lot of our people, and then took things from the temple and slaughtered pigs. And I think they put up a statue of Zeus inside of the temple, and poured drip swine's blood all inside the temple. So, I mean, they completely defiled it. And a lot of our people, many were upset and fought for it, which was the story of the Maccabees, and many was just okay with it. They kind of moved along, maybe shook their head for a while, but just enjoyed what Greek life had to offer.
Concepts, words, personal names, like Antigonus ish Soko. Antigonus is clearly a Greek name, and there are thousands of Greek names throughout. So we encountered this culture, and we found it to be of tremendous utility. We thought this is an exceptional course, and we love it. The problem is we loved it too much for our own good. Absolutely a fascinating story in the Gemara.
So I'm going to leave that there and pull up some more resources. So next, I want you to go to BibleHub.com and go to Revelations 13 and 16. When you get there, you're going to click right here, select COM, which means commentary. Then what I do is I look for finding page, because I know what I'm looking for. Leaf, I'm typing in leaf. So I'm going into a little bit of the customs during that period of time with Antiochus and whatnot. So in the Jameson Fawcett Brown Bible commentary, and I'm gonna go quick because I feel like I'm being long-winded. For obviously Matthew 13 and 16, calls all both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond to receive a mark in their right hand. All right, so we know what that is. That's charagma. A lot of these camps are not teaching charagma. They're not teaching it correctly. They're still teaching that the mark is spiritual. Just note it that it's, what is it? It's February 21st, 2023, and a lot of camps are still teaching that the mark is spiritual. But I digress, we going on. So we in the commentary section of Revelations 13 and 16 on Bible Hub, and you go down to receive a mark, literally that they should give them a mark, such as a brand master stamps on their slaves. So that was a custom of masters and slaves, right? Even in cargo with trilateral slave trade in America, American slavery, they used to brand us. Reading on, and monarchs on their subjects. Soldiers voluntarily punctured their arms with marks of the general under whom they served. Votaries of idols branded themselves with the idol cipher or symbol. And if you go into the Greek life, Greek culture, crossing the burning sands, Greek life at these HBCUs and different PWIs, they brand themselves, all right, with the symbol of their idol or the symbol of their frat or soror. Reading on, their Greek soror, right? So reading on, thus Antiochus Epiphanes branded the Jews with the ivy leaf, the symbol of Bacchus. All right. So not only were he causing us to wear stupid hats and basically all the young, pretty, what's it say? And the elder broke it down. It's like for the Maccabees, the young, handsome young men to go and play games in the gym and wear hats. This all went back to how the Greeks are. When I was reading up in, I forget his name now. It'll come back to me. But one of the writers that wrote about the Persians, he included that the Persians learned pederasty from the Greeks. Okay, so when you're dealing with the Greeks, you're dealing with politics, math, science, philosophy, but you're also dealing with pederasty, right? Didn't Alexander himself carry a young black boy around? Let's continue, which is in the scriptures. The elder brought it out. Elder Aria, the elder brought it out. Ariam La, and I forget what the word was, but it means having a little boy. It's the word for effeminate. Goes into having a little boy as your lover. Anyways, that's pederasty. This is what the Greeks brought about when they came to Jerusalem and spreaded that culture. This is why you still have a lot of that going on. You have Pizzagate. You have all these busts of men turning themselves in or getting caught with kitty stuff and kitty. I mean, it's real ridiculous out there. This is why you can't even leave your child after dark no more outside. But I digress. And once again, I'm going on and on. Thus, Antiochus Epiphanes branded the Jews with the ivy leaf, the symbol of Bacchus. What is Bacchus known for, by the way? Since they're branding us with God. And interestingly enough, you type in Bacchus, 1 dead, 4 wounded in New Orleans Mardi Gras parade shooting. Kohaloyim Yahweh Shem Yahushua. You see? This is the spirit of Bacchus. Look, 5 shot, including child, during New Orleans Bacchus parade. They even call it the Bacchus parade. You can't make it up. 1 day ago. Let's go into the Dionysus, right? Bacchus. So let's get a quick understanding of Dionysus, who they branded us with, the ivy leaf, okay? Ancient Greek religion, myth. So you also got Greek religion, Greek mythology, Greek idolatry. It says the Romans called him Bacchus, ancient Greek Bacchus, for frenzy. He is said to induce, called Bacchia. Going up is the god of grape harvest, winemaking, orchards, and fruit vegetation, festivity, insanity, ritual madness, religious ecstasy, and theater. The Dionysus Lutherius, the liberator, his wine, music, and ecstatic dance free his followers from self-conscious fear and care, and subvert the oppressive restraints of the powerful. His thyrsus, a fennel stem scepter, sometimes wound with ivy and dripping with honey. Remember that ivy leaf? Says is both a beneficent wand and a weapon used to destroy those who oppose his cult and the freedoms he represents. Those who partake of his mysteries are believed to become possessed and empowered by the God himself. Okay? So, but this here you go right here. Bacchus. Look at that, man. Look at these. This is the Greek. You know what I'm saying? This is the Greek culture, man. Nudity. It begins with nudity, but then they bring in little children. Okay? This is the truth of the matter is they bring in little children to these celebrations, and then they begin to profane those little children, man. That's what's going on. Second Maccabees 6 and 7. Let's get the scriptures. It's the Greek culture is really destructive, heathenistic, and terrible. And then, but it comes with so much music and sound, and the culture is everywhere, and it's it's entertaining for some, and there's science involved in politics, and so it's very appealing to the average Israelite. The average Israelite will choose Greek culture over Israelite culture any day of the week. The average Jake out here in America. Anyway, Second Maccabees 6 and 7 says, moreover, at the monthly celebration of the king's birthday, the Jews from bitter necessity had to partake of the sacrifices. And when the festival of Dionysus, aka Bacchus, was celebrated, they were compelled to march in his procession wearing wreaths of ivy. This is in Maccabees. All right, so this is what they made us do. This is how Israel began to celebrate when Greek culture stepped into Judea. 3rd Maccabees 2 and 29. Those who are registered are to be branded on the body by fire with the ivy leaf sign of Dionysus. Let me select it. Let me go to this one. Those who are registered are to be branded on the body by fire with the ivy leaf sign of Dionysus, and are also to be assigned to their former limited civic status. But so as not to seem hateful to all, he added, but if any should prefer to join those who have been initiated into the mysteries, because basically Antiochus started giving extra rank to those who are really putting off the customs of the Jews, and putting on, really starting to practice a Greek culture. He would give them special citizenship. You see, the ones who got the brand on their arm were special. All right, but they limited civic status, right? Because maybe they didn't join in all the festivities. It says, but if any of them should prefer to join those who have been initiated into the mysteries, these are to enjoy political rights equal to Alexandrians. Prefer to join those who have been initiated into the mysteries. You can only imagine what that means. A lot of Jakes today in Hollywood are initiated into the mysteries, and they enjoy the political rights equal to the Alexandrians. You see, it gets dark, Israel. Now, some Jews, while pretending to detest the steps to be undertaken for the city's religion, readily surrendered themselves to share in great fame through the association they would have with the king. So, sellouts pretending to detest the steps undertaken for the city's religion. I mean, they act in front of people. They act like they hated what was going down. In front of the rest of the Jews, their own people, they pretended to hate that Greek culture was manifesting inside Judea at the rate in which it was happening, and the city was losing its religion, but readily surrendered themselves on the other behind, right? When the opportunity came to surrender, they were ready to go, to share in great fame, through association they would have with the king. So you became associated with the king when you surrendered the religion. You enjoyed political rights when you were initiated into the mysteries. You had civic status when you were branded on the body by fire with the ivy leaf sign of Dionysus. You see? Just keep reading. Now that was one part. I just want to bring out the rest of them, and then we can call it. This is from the Cambridge Bible for School and Colleges. It says the word mark is not the same as in Galatians 6 and 7, but the image as there, that of a brand put upon slaves to identify them. So they're making note that Galatians 6 and 17 is a different type of mark, one spiritual, but this mark seems to be physical, as in slaves, because they understood the heritage and the customs and traditions of the master-servant relationship, and how the master would brand his slaves, usually with irons or with marks upon his skin. So they understand, they're making that comparison with the mark received of those in Revelations 13 and 16, as we do today. Pagan devotees sometimes received such a brand, marking them as property of their god. So a lot of branding for the gods were happening, starting with the Hellenistic period, diaspora, all the way up into modern day Rome, which we're coming into that time of branding again. This is the great branding, the great charagma, the great staking, the great cutting that's about to begin. In the so-called third book of Maccabees, which we just read, which, stupid as it is, has perhaps some historical foundation. You see how crazy these people talk? Anyways, how could it be stupid but has historical foundation? But a lot of Christians left out Maccabees, as did a lot of Jewish Hebrew texts left out Maccabees. It says, we are told that Ptolemy Philopator ordered the Jews of Alexandria to be branded with an ivy leaf. So that was Ptolemy Philopator. That was a Ptolemy. The consignants, well, it was Ptolemies was ruling from Egypt, and Seleucus was ruling from Syria, and Israel was right at the bottom of the Seleucid Empire. So that we were all often fought over. But I believe that's referring, Maccabees' third chapter is referring to Antiochus. It says, Jews of Alexandria to be branded with an ivy leaf, to cognizance of Dionysus. Okay, I said Alexandria. It did say Alexandria in there. One may compare also the sealing of the servants of Yahweh in chapter 7, Revelations 14 and 1. And last one. So this Dionysus leaf symbol, all right, was forced upon us by Greeks. Let's see. Commentators find that less illustrations in the brands set upon slaves by their masters, or upon soldiers by their monarchs, or in the branding of slaves attached to certain temples. This is the Vincent Ward Studies. Herodotus, that was the name I was looking for earlier, describes a temple to Hercules at the canopic mouth of the Nile, and says, if a slave runs away from his master and taking sanctuary at this shrine, gives himself up to the god, and receives certain sacred marks upon his person, whosoever his master may be, he cannot lay hand on him. So getting the mark signified that you were now owned by and possessed by a new master, which is leading up to the mark again. Now, how can two walk together lest they be agreed? How can there be unity if you don't agree upon what the beast is and how the beast is going to implement its mark? Finishing out, in the treatise concerning the Syrian goddess, falsely attributed to Lucian. It is said of the slaves of the temple are all branded, some upon the wrist and some upon the neck. Paul in Galatians 6 and 17 applies the word for these brands to the marks of Yahushua's service, which he bears in his body. In 3rd Maccabees 2 and 29, we read that Ptolemy Philopator, okay, it is Ptolemy, required all the Jews of Alexandria to be registered among the common people. So Ptolemy was a Greek, as was Antiochus. This is during the Hellenistic period. And that those who were thus registered were to be marked on their persons by the ivy leaf symbol of Dionysus. In Leviticus 19 and 28, the Israelites are forbidden to make cuttings in their flesh for the dead and to print marks upon themselves. So call lawyer Mihabash Miao Shah. This video is edifying. Till next time, Shalom.